going, ladies and gentlemen. We've invited first class, now we're inviting executive platinum, emerald, sapphire.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome back the investigator, Lee Harris. How are you?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you. Was that what was that word?
Investigative. Now I can't say it. Investigative.
That's a very good word, and I like it, and I think I know what that one means. It means I investigate things.
That's right, and you investigate a lot of travel.
Yes.
Good man.
I think this is
got it.
The first week in about 12. So this is good. This is good for me.
I think this is the first week in about 24, but who's counting?
Probably.
And I have to mention that Crew Travel is brought to you weekly by Blue Marine Travel, who haven't lost a passenger since Lee and I were born back in the late 1900s, which was quite a few years ago.
Yeah, well, one or two, maybe.
Just a couple. Yes, we won't go into that. It always gets scary for me. So, of course, the biggest thing that I have been talking about for probably the past 6 to 8 months is FLIBS, because I was supposed to be going. And now, of course, I'm not, which makes me so unhappy. But we finally got a date. It just happens to be about a week late. What's going on with the US?
Something that has been a bit of a hot topic on this show and in the world of crew travel is the US and its ban imposed on travellers from the red zone. Remember, the red zone being EU, UK and Ireland, Brazil, China and South Africa. As we found out a month ago, the restrictions are due to be lifted in November. But other than that, further information was scarce, to say the least. Well, the good news is that the US have finally given a confirmed date that the restrictions will ease, and that date is the 8th of November. From this date, anyone travelling from the red zone who is fully vaccinated will be able to enter for tourism reasons. This is also a massive relief for crew needing to travel to the Caribbean as that season kicks off, as the relaxing of rules now means the crew can transit the USA to a third country, provided again they are fully vaccinated. What we also know as of this time is that the vaccinations that will be accepted are those on the World Health Organization list, namely those being Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Moderna and Sinopharm. Now, people traveling to and transiting the US will still need a negative PCR test. Again, that has to be dated no more than 72 hours before departure. And also in further good news for the US as well, at the same time they announced a date for the air borders opening up, they've also announced that the land borders with Mexico and Canada will also reopen on the 8th of November. These were shut at the same time as the border restrictions were put in place almost 19 months ago.
Wow. Well, it looks like things are moving. It just so happens that it's about, 10 days too late for me.
Yeah, I know it's a bit, it's really unfortunate that FLIBS is just that week or two, a bit too soon for this. Fingers crossed, hopefully it'll still be a great show. Just unfortunately not as many people from Europe.
Well, they won't have me, which makes it just rotten.
Exactly right. I mean, they're lost.
But the good thing is I am going to the Caribbean because I have a podcast that is in conjunction with an American television program in the Caribbean for 2.5 weeks aboard a tall ship. So that means that's going to be going ahead and I'm going to be learning how to sail.
How exciting. I mean, this is good news, isn't it?
No, it is. It is. And I've never been to the Caribbean. So I'm really excited about, finding out, experiencing, eating.
You're going to have a wow of time.
Oh, I will. And I'll be coming to you from there as well. So via Yachting International Radio, not just the television program. So
wow. On location. This is super exciting.
Yeah. And you and I will do our Sunday morning show perhaps on board.
What, you're gonna fly me out?
No. Nice try though. No.
Nearly. It's worth a try.
I know, it's worth a shot. I mean, mind you, you are the one that works for a travel agency, so I can imagine if you wanted to fly out, you could.
You know what, I would. That's just the New Zealand government. They won't let me back in again.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah. What's going on in New South Wales?
Yes, so fully vaccinated travellers arriving into New South Wales from overseas will no longer have to quarantine from November the 1st. Premier Dominic Perrottet, and I really hope I've pronounced his name right, made the significant announcement on Friday as the state prepares to hit its 80% double dose vaccination milestone. Mr. Perrottet said hotel and home quarantine will be a thing of the past as from the 1st of November. Sydney and New South Wales will be reopened to all. Although he did say opened to everybody, what we do know is that the date of the 1st of November is only for fully vaccinated Australian residents and citizens to return home without the need to quarantine. So please don't get ready to book your flights if you're not an Australian resident or citizen, because you won't get into the country at this moment in time. International travellers are going to have to wait a little bit longer. And obviously, as soon as we have that news, then we'll let you know what that date's going to be. For Australian crew looking to get home to Sydney, please note a negative PCR test again will be required prior to travelling. It's also worth noting non-vaccinated crew can still return back to Sydney, but without a proof of vaccination, you will still have to do the 14-day mandatory quarantine at your own expense. They have also put a limit on 210 unvaccinated arrivals a week. That's all. Only 210 unvaccinated arrivals a week who still have to go into mandatory quarantine.
I think it's pretty much now, at least we know straight across the board, every time that, we're talking about another country opening up, is to be expected. I mean, PCR test, period. Everyone is sort of expecting the PCR test, and it is happening. And, I don't think we should even question it. If we're going to go somewhere, we're going to get on a plane, just automatically assume that you have to have your PCR test at least 72 hours in advance, period.
Yeah, I totally agree. It should just be built into the whole check-in process, to be honest with you. We've said it numerous times, how quick you can get results turned around now. Do it at check-in, it's done, then you can see as you get on the plane, negative, positive, there you go. Simple as, job done.
I agree. And the New Zealand lottery is heating up. I know I shouldn't call it that, but it is really for seafarers anyway.
Exactly right. It is a complete and utter lottery. Yeah. So the next room release for crew to secure a quarantine place back in New Zealand will be on Thursday, the 21st of October. That's at 2 p.m. New Zealand time. The lobby will open up 1 hour earlier at 1 p.m. New Zealand time. Unfortunately, at this moment, rooms and months that will be in the release will be confirmed closer to the time. So even it's literally on Thursday. So what we're talking 5 days away, they can't even tell you what months are going to be free for you to look at. So for crew who need to get home, it's absolutely ridiculous. You cannot plan anything at all. It's an absolute joke, I've got to say. Anyway, further to this, also hidden away in an article this week, with the COVID response minister, Chris Hipkins for New Zealand, he stated, and I quote, "I think you'll see some changes there in the coming weeks. There is a cabinet process to go through where we make those decisions. And I don't want to get ahead of those, but we are absolutely looking at our border settings now, especially in the light of the fact we've got more cases in the community." Now, this statement, which was hidden away in an article, corroborates information that we have received from another source, advising New Zealand will likely soon announce a quarantine-free repatriation policy similar to that of New South Wales for fully vaccinated nationals. New Zealand seafarers were also specifically stated as having to be included in this class of traveller. So that all sounds very promising. It's not been signed off yet, but we have heard it corroborated from numerous sources within the government that this is going to be taking place quite quickly. Exactly when it's going to be, we don't know, not yet. Obviously, as soon as we do, we'll let you know first here.
I have to say something. Seafarers are not being taken seriously and not being looked after, period, the way they should be. We would not have a single damn thing on ourselves if it weren't for these people. And we see these guys being guys and gals. I say just guys because it's a general consensus. Out at sea, stuck on board, a ship, a shipping container ship, whatever it may be, even yachts, etc. And they're stuck out there for a year, 2 years now. All as a result of governmental policies. And then all of a sudden we have countries saying, oh no, we have a shortage of this, we have a shortage of that, there's a short. Why do you think you have that shortage? It's because the only reason you get that and are able to put that in your home is because there is a seafarer out there somewhere that is making sure that product shows up on your doorstep. Now, get your head out of your ASS and take care of these people, because they deserve to be taken care of, and they shouldn't be working in the conditions they're working in. And when they want to come home, they should be given the royal treatment in getting home, period.
Yeah, exactly right. I totally agree. It's almost like they're the invisible man, aren't they? Because they're not in the country. They're forgotten about. People don't realize that they have family, they have friends, they have commitments in back home where they need to be. And these guys, as you say, have been busting their ASS, the whole way through this pandemic. And what astounds me more than anything is the complete, like you say, lack of regard for them from their own governments. And not only that, it's the whole mental health scenario. Especially, I've made this point before, but especially when you talk about super yacht crew as well, people who don't work in the industry or just see the headlines in a newspaper think that because they're on these yachts that they've got this wonderful life and all the rest of it. They don't see how hard these guys work. And not only that, they're away from their families for, even if they could get back, they're away for 4, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, all the rest of it. But some of these guys throughout this pandemic are lucky if they've got home once or twice, and we're talking now 19 months into this pandemic. And the total disregard, especially New Zealand have shown to seafarers, is an absolute disgrace, and it winds me up no end. And another point as well is, back when we had the clap for the NHS and clap for the health workers, don't get me wrong, they've done a magnificent job and they all deserved it as well. But why is it that people can see that the work that they've done, but they, just because they were in the countries themselves, and the governments can say that, we need to have a clap on a Thursday evening for these people because they've done a great job. But the people who are supplying all of the stuff that people need can just be completely forgotten about. It's an absolute disgrace and it's a joke.
It is. And for me, I sit there and I think, every single time any of these lawmakers or policymakers sit down and have dinner, the only reason that food is on the table, unless of course it is a product that is made in that country, which today's day and age, we know, possibly one item on your plate is made in that country and the rest is actually shipped in. How would you be happy if in New Zealand, for example, you have local New Zealand meat, but you're looking for, something that comes from the UK or something that comes from the US or something that comes from, Costa Rica, for that matter. If you don't have those seafarers, that isn't coming. And, these people that have been left out to sea for the last 19 months, you know what? They shouldn't pay. They shouldn't pay their taxes for the last year and a half. Why should they? They haven't even been allowed back into their country. So what good? The idea behind paying taxes is because you're paying for the privilege of being associated with a country. You're paying for the roads, you're paying for the healthcare, you're paying for the school systems, you're paying for the infrastructure. Well, if you're not allowed to take advantage of that infrastructure, why the hell should you pay into it? Period.
Exactly right. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's just complete nonsense. It has been all the way through the pandemic. It's been a complete joke. And now we're getting towards, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're getting towards the end of it anyway, and now all of a sudden seafarers are starting to be thought about. It's an absolute joke.
Well, I think, that we need to continue this push to make sure that seafarers are front and center and mainstream. I think the biggest problem has been that mainstream media and media in general has never talked about this segment of society. It's just sort of one of those, not dirty secrets, because it just sort of happens and nobody thinks about it. But we need to make sure people think about it, because these people have rights, and their rights weren't being looked after prior to COVID. So you can imagine that because they weren't being looked after prior to COVID, there is no incentive for anybody to even look after them in the middle of a crisis. It's the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and these people have never been able to be squeaky because no one's given them the voice.
Totally agree. Yeah, 100%. At least we've highlighted it. I mean, it's all we can do, I suppose, from our little part, isn't it? And I know there's people, especially here in New Zealand. I can't speak for other countries, but I know there's a lot of people here who are pushing the government hard. And all we can do is hope that they do see sense, albeit 19 months too late. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's keep on talking about it and hopefully make a change. Thailand, what's going on there?
Yeah, so Thailand's government today confirmed that it will end its quarantine requirement for vaccinated visitors from 10 nations from November the 1st. Passengers from the likes of China, Germany, Singapore, the United Kingdom, and the United States will all be exempt from the country's quarantine requirement. Now, passengers wanting to travel to Thailand will have to take a PCR test at most 72 hours before departure, and then they'll have to take another one on arrival. Now, if this comes back negative, tourists are free to travel across Thailand without any restrictions whatsoever. Further nations will be allowed to travel to Thailand without restriction as from the 1st of December. They've not announced who they'll be yet, but they have said there'll be more added to the list on the 1st of December.
Another place on my bucket list, Thailand.
You'll be able to travel there soon.
I just want to go there for the Thai green curry, really. The food, always the food. Aerolineas Argentinas. Did I say that right?
You did. You got it spot on. See, I can't say it now that you've put a curse on me. Aerolineas Argentinas is looking to restore its international connectivity after more than a year and a half. In November, the state carrier will add frequencies to 10 international destinations. Now, according to a statement by the airline, it will add flights to Bogota, Lima, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Santiago, Montevideo, Miami, and New York. Moreover to that, in December, Aerolineas will also restart flying to Cancun and in January to Punta Cana.
Great. And of course, this week, we had an absolute avalanche of crew questions all around Australia. So what's going on with that?
I mean, as you can imagine, we have been absolutely inundated with questions with regards to Australia, and more specifically, New South Wales and Sydney Airport opening up for the quarantine-free travel, which we talked about earlier. Lots of Australian crew who live in different states to New South Wales, who are all desperate to get home, because let's not forget, again, Australia is not squeaky clean when it comes to people getting home, especially seafarers. They've basically all had the same idea. It's almost like all the crew have got together to ask the same question. Basically, what they want to know is if they travel into Sydney quarantine-free, can they then travel onwards by air or land interstate to their respective homes? So, for example, flying to Sydney, not have to do the quarantine, then fly onwards to Brisbane. Now, obviously, the announcement for quarantine-free travel into New South Wales only came at the end of last week, and details are still very thin on the ground. However, as of the time of this interview, the information I have received is that anybody arriving into Sydney can only travel interstate if they have prior approval from the state they wish to travel onto. And even if they get that, once they get there, they will then have to complete the mandatory 14-day quarantine on arrival in the respective state they wish to have as their final destination. So I'm sorry to everybody who has emailed in, because there has been a ton. It's been crazy. I'm sorry to burst all of your bubbles, but this is the latest information we have to hand, basically confirming there is no way to circumnavigate the need for 14-day mandatory quarantine if your final destination in Australia is not New South Wales at this time.
And that, of course, is on your own dime.
It is, unfortunately, yeah. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get more states opening up soon. I think New South Wales have hit their 80%, so they're going to do it. Fingers crossed others will do it as well, and then we'll start to see flights open up. One other thing I would say also with regards to this is, although Sydney has said they're going to open up from the 1st of November, the flight schedules are slow at catching this up. So flights are still scarce, and the ones that are out there are still super expensive. So you might want to hang on a week or two until the airlines get their act together and get the schedules in place.
What is the cost of quarantine at the moment?
I think it's around about 3,000 Australian dollars, between 3 and 3.5. It's different. Different states have got different prices, but it's in that bracket between 3 and 3.5.
Yeah, it's like, go away and work, and half of your month's salary, or if you're junior crew, your entire month's salary is gone, just coming home again.
Crazy, isn't it?
Not much sense in that. Not much sense in that. It's such a shame. Well, it's good to hear that things are starting to slowly move and that the planet is opening up. Not before time, that's for sure, because we're just ready now. I think we're ready, and the seafarers, they're ready. My heart goes out to a lot of them, because we're talking about kids that have left their families and want to go home to see mom and dad, which is understandable, especially at Christmas time. We're talking about moms and dads that have to go out in order to feed their families back home and aren't able to come back home to take care of their kids. I've read stories online of fathers and mothers that have been away from their children for 2 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've spoken to some, basically, again, the same thing. They've not been able to get home. Specifically, ones that I've spoken to have been trying to get to Australia. They've not been able to do it. These are parents of children who they've gone off to do their job, haven't been able to get home and then had to take their shore leave in, I don't know, the UK or France or somewhere else, and like you say, have not seen their kids in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. It's just a ridiculous situation.
Yeah, and it's not just Australia. It's, I mean, there's many countries around the world that is just, it's absolutely chaotic. And you would think that the amount of money that governments get paid, they'd be able to figure some of this stuff out. But once again, Queen of the World.
We need to get you a hat or something that says it on it, Queen of the World. Yeah,
I'm going to work on that for next week. I'm gonna have my Queen of the World hat.
Yeah, I think so.
Next week, I think so. It's a good idea. And then you can have the backup Queen of the World hat.
Yeah.
That's your task for this week.
Princess of the World.
Do you know what? I'm just going to edit that in.
Yeah,
I can do that. I have to mention that Crew Travel is brought to you weekly by Blue Marine Travel, who haven't lost a passenger since Lee and I was born back in the late 1900s. And contact them for anything. All of the links that you may need, we'll provide a link to the website, and please do head on over there and click on whatever links you need, because all that information will be on the Blue Marine website for you as well. We'll include Lee's information for LinkedIn, because if you're looking to travel anytime in the near future, if anything is happening in the world, you'll know it. Thanks again, Lee.
Thank you ever so much. Always a pleasure.
I know. You've been watching another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we're boarding passengers seated in zones E and F.